occasioni per Bremer, gol! Pirlo, la conclusione in rete! Andrea Pirlo, un gol pazzesco! Del Piero, gol! Alex, Del Piero! Palla di Pogacar, Pogba, rete! Un gol incredibile! Pogba fa esplodere lo Juventus Stadium!
We are back after that international break that felt so much longer than 2 weeks. But ciao tifosi bianconeri, hello and welcome to episode 355 of the Turin Giants podcast. I am Kevin, your host for this episode, joined by my two brethren here who, gentlemen, it seems like it's been far too long since we've had the opportunity to do this, and we have something reasonably happy and exciting to talk about today. Zach, Frederic, how are you guys?
I have not trimmed my beard since I last saw you. And like the last time I was on an episode, it looked like yours, Kevin. And now look at it. I'm basically Santa Claus. So that's how long it's been. But I'm ecstatic to be back to talk about a win and a clean sheet, albeit one that was nervy, certainly at times.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything Zach just said, but I really like the beard. So I'm not hoping you'll stay too far away from us, but I'll keep on dreaming that you'll keep it that way because I really love it. Like, and you know, it's a bit of a half glass full, half glass empty situation today, but we'll roll with what we have. So.
Yeah, and we are live on YouTube. So for those of you who are with us now, thank you for joining. If you remember who we are after the international break, thank you for joining us again. We see a lot of familiar names in the chat and some new ones as well. Great to have you with us. If you are watching this recording later on YouTube, again, thanks for taking some time to watch it. If you're listening in audio format only, you have no idea about what we're talking about with Zach's beard, but it's a solid, call it 2 centimeters off of his face, but his dome is tight and shiny as always, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you're on YouTube, a like and subscribe goes a long way. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a 5-star rating and a review would mean the world to us. You can follow us on Instagram at Turin Giants and also visit our website, turingiants.com. And again, if you are listening on audio format, check out our YouTube channel at Turin Giants Official. So, gentlemen, I think a lot of the world, obviously not all of the world with all the diversity that it's had, but over this past weekend, a lot of the world was celebrating the Easter resurrection. Juventus had one of its own today with De Gregorio stepping off the bench, saving a penalty, producing a number of nice and important saves, and thus bringing himself and maybe his season back to life a bit. So that's where I want to start. Frederic, I know you have been a critic of De Gregorio, deservedly so. I don't think anybody's going to try and defend what his season has been so far, but I'd like to let you start just reacting to the match we saw from De Gregorio in the second half.
I'm personally very happy for the guy. I mean, you don't wish ill on anybody, especially if that person is on your own team. I do not like him as a goalie. If that point didn't came across in the 300 and so podcast that I've been on or whatever. But no, I'm happy for him because I think, you know, it was a tipping point in his career as well because he went a bit down the drain in terms of order preference and starting lineup, and maybe rightfully so. But then, you know, having to fill in Perrin's spot, who had a calf injury, if I'm not mistaken, and needed to execute some well-timed saves. Well, he did just that. So I'm very happy for him because it'll probably boost his confidence. I'm not sure if it'll be enough to get him the starting position on the team. for now. But I'm really happy for him. This is something that he needs and he wanted, and maybe he even deserves, because apart from all the flaws and all the things that he's done wrong, if I can call it like that, you still like to see, especially in your own team, that underdog climbing back out of the hole and being successful, even at this point, because I'll repeat myself or paraphrase what I said in chat. If that penalty went in and we maybe had therapy session number 1365 today. So I'm happy for him first and foremost, but also happy for us, because it didn't look too good. But we'll get into that later on, I assume.
Zach, how important just was that save?
You could see, I mean, it was not only important for the individual, like Frederic said, it was not only important for the game, but I think it was important for the people behind the athletes that we see. You saw the team, like what I think Locatelli jumped into De Gregorio's arms after the follow-up save. Everyone swarmed him. You could say on a human level, you could see on a human level what that meant to the team, for that moment, for the individuals. And I just thought, like, look, when Milik doesn't play for a year and a half, you're rightfully criticizing his presence on the team, but you're not criticizing him personally. And when he steps on the pitch, you want him to do well. Just like Frederic said, De Gregorio was poor, so you rightfully criticize his performance, but you want him to do well. You want the team to do well, and you want reasons to celebrate him. And we saw just that today. It was a wonderful moment for him. It was a wonderful moment for the team. It was a wonderful moment in the game from a timing perspective, from a scoreline perspective. And so it was a great sporting moment for me to observe. If we'd sell De Gregorio in the summer, whatever, I still look back and you think the character that it took for him to stand up and how much the team loved on him for rising to the occasion was enormous. And for everyone who says he doesn't extend his arms when he dives, well, that big left mitt came out there and got that ball out and kept us at a clean sheet. So props to De Gregorio.
And able to get up off his feet to get the rebound too.
Oh yeah, yeah. With Locatelli, I think it was Locatelli right in front of him, almost screening him to an extent. Yeah. I mean, let's just get into it. I mean, he doesn't extend his hands; he extends his hands. He doesn't save penalties; he saves penalties. He has a horrible aerial presence. He makes a few really aggressive aerial plays to win the ball back. He's confident with his feet, which what they say, and he was again today. I mean, he comes in. It's very uncommon for goalkeepers to step into a game mid-game, like the mindset to ramp your brain up to the speed and in the mentality that you need to engage, and then to be faced with a penalty when he hasn't played in forever. I mean, that also sparks to the mentality that he had. He came in ready when he was playing before he was sat or replaced by Perrine for several games. You could see that mentally he was just crumbling, if not already crumbled. Today it was different, and that speaks to his preparation and likely a lot of work he did personally and with the team and so forth since he's played in order to get him in the mindset to make the contribution he did today. And it's these types of performances that if we get top 4 at the end of the season, we're going to look back and be like, that moment was key.
Yeah, I also wanted to add, I think it's very nice of him not to out any comments, because I think he received a lot of questions concerning the fact that he lost his starting position and whatever, and from journalists and whoever, and he never responded to that. And I think that fair game to him, because you could go in and start a whole media frantic circus just based on your feelings alone, or what happened within the team, or the results or your performances. But he chose not to do that, and I want to commend him for that, because he took the hard way, and I kind of like him for that personally. So kudos to him.
So if we go back to the start of the match and coming into this evening's game, there was a very important match that was played earlier in the day between Udinese and Como, which set this game up to have, I mean, not that it wasn't important to begin with, being the start of the final 8 games of the season, but added extra pressure to deliver 3 points on the evening. Zach, I know you caught some of Udinese Como live. Just give us a kind of your perspective on what you saw and then what that meant for this evening's game.
First, just the short of it is Udinese was the better team for easily 75, 80 minutes. They controlled the possession against a possession-hungry Como. They controlled a lot of the chances. Their starting striker was injured, and so they really struggled to make good chances to seize that game, and they had every opportunity to do it. Como was very weak offensively. They really never pressured the goalkeeper. They didn't make good decisions. And this is what you see at the tail end of seasons is teams, certainly inexperienced teams, drop points unnecessarily. That's why the door is still very much open for Juventus. So after the draw, only 4 points ahead of us, we had to go out and show that we have the maturity of a team of Juventus' stature. I know that's something we haven't shown too often the last couple of years, but that's exactly what we saw today. And with the Inter match coming up for Como, it's another perfect opportunity for Juventus to seize on an opportunity for positional spots against an Atalanta team that has struggled a bit of late and leapfrog Como by the end of next weekend.
Yeah, and we also discussed that back on the last episode we did with Beppe, Zach, if I'm not mistaken, where we predicted that Como would lose some points during this run up to the grand finale of the season. And I'm very, very happy they did, and the way that they did was even more kind of spectacular in my opinion, because they lost that special grinta that they had, prior, seeing a lot of Como games this season, and they always make it hard on the opposing team just by their pressure and their basically nonstop running and covering all the passing lines or whatever. And for some reason they didn't do that today, and I think that some reason is because of the anxiety and the stress that's getting to them, because now in the last 7 games of the season they'll have to perform, whereas in the rest of the season they were the underdogs and everything was a bonus. Now it's time to reap what you saw, and for them I feel that they're maybe a bit too unexperienced and have an unexperienced coach in that effect as well to maybe secure that top spot. But that's only beneficial to us if we keep raking in points, because it's going to be redundant if we don't. So it's going to be I think it's going to be, we're set for 7 spectacular games for the end of the season, I feel.
Zach, I was listening to the IF TV podcast, I think over break, this international break. It felt like an actual break.
Yeah.
And I think a number of folks are familiar with them, and Farhad hosted one of their guys, Marco Messina, in our After Hours podcast series that Farhad has started recently. There was this big debate on whether Como is facing any pressure, and a big going into these last 8 matches. And a lot of perspective was very grounded in, they were just playing with house money, in that they started the season maybe with expectations for getting into Europe. And if they finished in the Europa League or Conference League, that would have been an amazing finish, give a side that just came out of Serie B recently, regardless of how much money they spent. That's not an easy thing to do. But now finding themselves in the driver's seat where they're in control of their outcome for this season. And while that may be true, they still find themselves in this position, right? They still find themselves in a position where like that pressure has to lay on them, even if it's not the type of pressure that Juve might be facing, in that they're underperforming and need to be in a better spot. Like, I don't want to talk too much about Como, but Zach, just what do you think is going on with that team and how they'll be able to navigate where they are?
There's 2 parts of it. There's the manager part and there's the player part. And when your team is, and they do have veteran players who've been there and done that. But when the core of your team is guys like Perrone, Bacciarina, Nico Paz, all young players who haven't done it, they will be feeling pressure. And because they're in that position and they want to keep going. And then it gets in your mind and you over try and you make mistakes and then you get down on yourself and you can have that sort of snowball effect. It comes down to leadership within the team, guys like, Morata, for instance, former Juventus player, to ground them, as well as a coach who can say, hey guys, go out there, have fun today. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. We're playing with house money type of thing. Obviously, that's an oversimplification of what the manager might say in that to try to lower the stress level. But I am, based on what we hear about Fabregas's tactical and man management style, I'm not sure he's the right person to reduce the pressure. I think he's going to push, and I think he's going to increase the pressure that these players are feeling and probably should be feeling in this instance. And we're going to have games like today. And Udinese is a highly competent side, but they are not at the level of Como, of what we've seen from Como. They're not the level, certainly, of Juventus or the other teams at the top. And they dominated Como today. Dominated them. And I think that if this was a Juventus team, I would come in here and I would spend most of my time talking about how the coach didn't get the team ready to play, didn't get their mindset right, didn't get their tactical setup right, didn't make the changes to influence the game in a positive way. And so when it comes down to it, I think Fabregas, who in a lot of ways has been the bright spark in bringing these players together, is now potentially working against them with his limitations as a manager.
I've heard some interesting things through a friend of mine who knows somebody who spoke with like Morata's wife, ex-wife. I don't know where he is with Alice Campello or whatever her name is, but with Morata playing there, I guess somebody was having dinner and it came out that Fabregas is very, like, he doesn't have high like EQ with his players and that he's very like emotionally like detached and doesn't like connect with them throughout certain moments that an individual might be going through, or the moment of where the team or the group finds itself. And there were comparisons to how he worked with his players to the way Thiago Motta worked with the Juventini as well, which, like, I'm not trying to compare them as coaches. Fabregas has done a nice job, and Thiago Motta certainly had his moment with Bologna. But it's just interesting, I think, to see how like that dynamic of the coaching will come into play through this final stretch for them.
And that's generally kind of what I'm alluding to, though, Kevin, is I've heard
exactly
people who are connected with players and connected with the team, and that works against. I mean, he's a young manager, and he's still figuring out his style, like Motta was. He's still learning, he's still growing in that regard. And from a Juventus standpoint, we could very well reap the benefits of his immaturity at that position.
Yeah, and it's very difficult, and then I'm going to stop speaking about Como because this is a Juve podcast. But the difficulty, I think, timing-wise, Fabregas couldn't be in a worse situation than he is now, because you're at this point where you need to keep your players motivated, but you need to take the pressure off them as well. And that's a very thin and fine line. And this is only something that, an experienced coach can do, has been in those situations, who's learned from those situations, and knows how to handle with that very thin, fine line. And I think it's very obvious that Fabregas is not there yet, and he's finding it very difficult to balance that motivational, hence taking pressure off type of thing from the players. And one way or another, the coach's decisions, whether it be from Napoli, Juve, Inter, Milan, Como, will be decisive in these last 7 weeks.
So coming into this game then, following their draw, we find ourselves with the opportunity to cut into their lead. And yes, we know coming into today, it's a 3-point lead, but in reality, it's a 4-point gap, given that they own the tiebreaker with the 6 dropped points we have against them. So this was a chance to cut that 4-point gap down to 2. We saw Luciano Spalletti starting 11. Zach, I'd like to start with you and your reactions to it. And I think most notably, we saw David's return to the starting 11.
I just don't have a lot of insight into the health of Vlahovic, because I would have thought that if he was made good progress after playing a few cameo minutes in the last game over the international break, considering how ineffective David has been, that we might see a Vlahovic or a Milik start. I think this was maybe Spalletti's last opportunity for Jonathan David to show that he belongs. With the right, with the health improving of those two other forwards, and it ended up being jumped to the end of David's performance. Other than a couple moments, was largely much of the same.
Yeah, and I might weigh in on that. Vlahovic had some, according to my sources last week, some irritation on his calf muscle. And it only has gotten worse to the point that where he started the pregame, the warm up, that he, felt a lot more pain. And at a certain point, they just recommended him to rest. And I think it was during before the substitution of Milik, that Spalletti or one of the coaches asked him, "Can you play?" And he said, "No, I'm in pain. I'm going in." And the physiologist followed him into the dressing room. So I think it's another injury. It's not related to the knee, but it's another injury nonetheless.
Let's pause on that moment. There were, I think, a number of articles and perspectives shared over the international break around the progression or non-progression of a potential Vlahovic renewal. Frederic, do you have any scoop-worthy insight to share while we're gathered here together?
It was a tale of ups and downs prior to the international break. It kind of went in the negative way, in terms that a lot of my sources thought that it wasn't meant to be the renewal, because in some way or another, Ristic got involved. Juventus was not having it. There was a bit of an argument between Vlahovic's camp and Juventus's camp. Vlahovic then decided, to separate Ristic from the whole renegotiation aspect, brought his dad in once again, and then it went along just fine. To my understanding, there are some details that need to be ironed out, but I'm not so sure as to how important those details will be. Vlahovic does expect a signing bonus. Juventus are not so eager to hand out that signing bonus. So there's still some things that need to be ironed out, but Vlahovic has made it very clear that he wants to stay. And Juventus have made it very clear on their part that they wouldn't mind him staying, but on their terms. So now it's just, sadly, trying to
If
figure
you're a
out
betting man,
Nobody
if you're a
wants-
betting
nobody
man,
wants
where
it.
do you think the odds lie right now? Are we going to see him in our kit next season or not?
I hate these kinds of questions. But realistically, I think yes.
Not an opinion of whether you like it or not, just whether you think it's
No.
going to happen. Yeah.
Realistically, I think it'll happen. I'm just a bit concerned about the timeline. I think the timeline is way more important than we think it is, because I saw a lot of journalists, reporters, influencers saying, well, maybe it'll be done next week. I'm not so sure. I think Juventus want to drag it out until they see if they can get Champions League qualification in. Should that not be the case, then I think that Juventus might embrace a Vlahovic renewal. If not, and they know that there's money coming in, they might just say, hey, we're going to lowball you. Here's our 3.5-4 million a year offer. Take it or leave it. And that would be somewhat logic, I think, to postpone it after you make sure you get the Champions League qualification in, and see what kind of impact renewal or non-renewal would have on your balance sheet and on your team. Because let's be honest, if we can pull in 100+ mil, I don't see why we need to give Vlahovic 5-6 million a season. I think there's plenty of other players that we can get in that position that could perform a lot better under those salary conditions. So I'm not sure, but I think eventually, he has nowhere to turn. He's no cards to play. He has no offers to, smack down on the negotiation table. But I played a waiting game if I were Juventus. But what do I know? I'm not French.
Yeah, there certainly isn't a reason to get it done before the end of this season. It's not like he has a ton of other offers coming his way, and there's some compelling event why we would need to rush this. I think it can make sense objectively under the right circumstances, but we'll see how that plays out. Zach, is there anything else you'd like to comment on the starting 11 before we get into the first half?
Nope.
All right. Well, let's get into the first half then. It was quite the bright start to the match. I think we came out with some energy. I think we looked like we had a good pressing mentality to move the ball forward at pace and move the ball at pace and stay high up the field. And that was rewarded quite early with Bremer's deflected goal following the series of play after a corner kick in which he stayed upfield. Frederic, what did you think of this? The first kind of 3 to 4 minutes there that led to that opening goal.
I liked it because Juventus were attacking the vulnerability of Genoa, keeping the pressure high, but you also had that sense that, you kind of just felt that Como dropped points, even if you didn't know the scoreline. You just felt that there was this extra, I'm not sure how to call it, topping on the Juventus performance or the pressure. And then you could see that they had their mind rides into, pinning Genoa against the wall very early on. And I really, really liked that. And it resulted in a quick goal, which led me and probably a lot of other people to suspect and believe that this was going to be kind of like a walkover, in the sense that we could, lay back the last 60 minutes and just enjoy Juventus playing out the game or killing the game. Boy, was I wrong.
Well, let's not jump ahead. We still have more of the first half to talk through, and I think following that goal, Zach, how would you characterize our play that continued over the next, call it 15, 20 minutes, and which peaked with that beautiful, I don't know, counterattack is the right phrase to that, because I think that goal actually started with a goal kick, but felt like a counterattacking goal, the way that we moved upfield at pace. Why don't you talk us through that McKenney goal?
Well, first things first, talk about how did we react to that first goal, which was your first question. I think we saw exactly what we've been seeing Juventus do under Spalletti since his appointment, which was to keep on the gas in order to get more goals. Our press in the midfield was highly effective. Our overall pace of play, and which turned into finding positive space in between the lines in the center of the pitch, was highly threatening. Yet the second goal comes from a full team buildup. It looks like a counterattack, but it's not. It's just a very fast vertical push, starting with a beautiful give and go from Cambiasso and Yildiz down in the corner. I don't know how many times we've seen, the left back pass to Yildiz, pass to the left back to the keeper, to the right back, those types of slow circular passing. But for some great reason, Cambiasso, when he passed to Yildiz, darted infield, got a one-touch return ball, immediately found McKenney in between the lines. McKenney, Thuram, both were finding lovely space in between the lines. McKenney runs up, gives it to Chico. Chico, surprise, surprise, actually has his head up, finds McKenney, who makes no doubt of it. And it was just a rapid forward progression of two beautiful give and goes between Cambiasso, Yildiz, McKenney, Chico, to get a well-deserved, well-worked, and beautiful team goal.
I want to highlight, though, on the second goal, you would assume that, on that breakaway counter move, you would assume your central striker to play a more prominent role in that attack. And our Canadian friend just didn't do anything. I mean, you have two options. You
Did
could
he make
either.
space for McKenney though coming
He
in?
did. That's what I was gonna say. He made the
Yeah.
run.
I don't.
Like, look,
I don't
Giving
think he
him too
did
much credit,
willingly.
Frederic, is that what you're
Willingly.
saying?
You're not gonna.
I don't think he did willingly.
You're not going
I
to
don't
give
think he
him
did willingly.
the lion's share of credit, right? The credit goes to the aforementioned, but those runs create space for a guy running, making the run McKenney did. At the
Yeah,
top
yeah,
of the
no,
box.
no, no.
And so,
That's true.
like, look, we're not going to say he's 50% responsible or anything like that, but you know, and we're not saying, oh, well, David's performance was great because he made a run that created some space for McKenney, but like, that you can't take that away from him.
No. But I meant in terms of if you're countering and you have a player coming up on the wing and you have a presence in the box, like say a Trezeguet, a Higuain, or whatever, you can automatically assume that the ball 9 times out of 10 lands in their space because you see the player standing there, you know what he's capable of. So what I'm getting at is maybe that a lot of the players within the team don't expect a lot from David anymore. Whereas, as we saw in the beginning of the season, they tried, passing it. Then we had David probably miss it or miss a touch or miss a control or whatever. That doesn't happen now. So he kind of gets passed, if you know what I mean, and credit for the movement or the thing that he did, but it was just running towards the first post, which every uh, able striker should be able to do. But I think in a sense that we're not counting on him within the team that much as we did in the start of the season, which is saying a lot as well. I feel because I think even a Boga or a Yildiz was at the penalty spot or close near the goal, he would have received that pass. And thank God that Chico was lucid enough to see McKenney and Thuram coming up and played it nicely into Max feet. And dare I say, the finish was also because we tend to overlook the finish because it was such a nice goal in terms of build-up, but the finish wasn't that easy. If you look at the goal from a slight different angle and in a bit more of a lagged version and replay, that you could see that it was not an easy first take to have on that ball, and he did it, sublime. So hats off to McKenney as well in
It
that
was
move.
it was a much harder finish than the one he missed in the 43rd minute from like the goal line where he puts it over. So
Yeah, true.
I
That
mean,
was
there was every opportunity, any player coming onto that with the ball coming at pace to sky that over the goal. But
if
credit to
Thuram was
him.
like if Thuram was on it, holy, he where he's shooting boots, I don't know where he
I would have
left them,
found
but
that in the Alps. Yeah.
maybe, but
Yeah.
But McKenney is I think our second leading scorer at this point behind Yildiz, our second leading goal contributor behind Yildiz. He has since, and keep in mind, he didn't play for like the first 2-3 months of the season because Tudor wouldn't play him. I mean, he's just come on with such quality, reliable quality, except for his miss in the 43rd minute, which was just aggravating.
Well, and then off of that
but I mean,
Locatelli free kick that Thuram laid off to him at the start of the second half, that, I mean, he was a step behind and maybe that was harder than it looked, but
yeah,
thank goodness those missed chances didn't come back to haunt us.
yeah.
indeed.
Couldn't agree more.
17 minutes in, we're up 2-0, and it's a comfortable, to get back to Frederic's point, right? 2-0 at 17 minutes. Easy game, right, guys?
Yeah, and that was the thing that bugged me in the first half because we kept on attacking and pressing, but there was you'd expect a Genoa to move slightly forward while, having space for us to, break away in a counter move and get that third one in pre-half time, which would have killed the game easily, even for Juventus standards. And that didn't happen. So going into halftime, and I was contemplating, I was like, we'll step on the gas probably the first 10 to 12 minutes in the second half, get that third one in and call it a good day. Yeah, I kind of was wrong there, I think.
Well, you were partially right. The first 5 minutes were good. You hit the post. You have the McKenney chance. I mean, those first 3 minutes or something, it was 3 to 5 minutes. You showed that life and that danger, and then all of a sudden, at the 50 to 52nd minute, all the air gets just like let out of the stadium, and Juventus
Can
up
we
until
pinpoint that?
almost the end of the game, just
Like,
offered nothing.
This is what we were talking about in our WhatsApp chat, right? And I think like we should have this conversation out in the open here. Is this we've been talking about quality and the lack of quality across this team as a primary reason why we're witnessing this season that we are. And so you look at a moment like today, in particularly as the second half unfolds, comfortably ahead 2-0, haven't given an inch, haven't given a centimeter to the opposition. We've missed a few chances, but still everything is going our way. Do we fall off of this because of the normal ebbs and flows of a game and it's just bound to happen? Is this quality in that we're just not capable of performing really well 70, 80 minutes out of a 90-minute match? Or is this a mentality thing where the team is like, hey, we got this. They're not giving us anything. We've got our 2 goals. I don't have to run as hard. We can just look to possess it conservatively. It's Zach. Let's start with you. Like what? And I'm sure it's not just one factor, right? It rarely is, but
Yeah.
Is something more prominent, or do you just what do you attribute it to?
There's 2 things. I think from a mentality standpoint, and this is, you have to be highly speculative on mentality because we're not in the locker room. I do think that there was a level of complacency. You come out the second half, you get those great chances. You're like, Genoa was not coming out that hard. This is over. So maybe there's a little bit of complacency there. I think a lot of it comes down to physicality. We emphasized pace of play in the first half, moving the ball, movement off the ball, vision, verticality, and we saw that disappear. It disappeared in two ways. One, the speed of play reduced, and then people, when they received the ball, weren't making the same type of quick, clean decisions that they were in the first half. So I took it as a fatigue thing. Some people came back from international break. They weren't able to keep up that pace of play. And as soon as you take the foot off the gas, your opponent starts to sense that you don't have that same level of threat, and they start to take liberties, which what we saw is after those first few, and I don't know, it could be a little bit of complacency, but I think the team just wasn't able to execute that, what we saw in the first half, the swarming press, the verticality of play. And a lot of it came down to individual mistakes that then takes the wind out of your sails. I'm switching from automotive to nautical metaphors, but I think my point remains that I think the team got tired. And you would hope that, and this goes back to mentality, you'd hope that even if you feel yourself getting a little bit tired, that you understand the stakes are at play and you force yourself to make better decisions and cleaner decisions and to adjust your play in order to still meet the objectives of the team. Like mind over matter in a situation like this. It's such an important game at the end of the season. And I think that wavered a little bit between about the 50-minute mark to the penalty and the 75th or 6th.
Frederic, what about you, man?
I think it's a combination of quality and mentality in a sense, and I totally agree with Zach. We're not in the dressing room, so it's going to be unfair for us to judge upon that. But the way I sense it, going from the things I've dealt with in the past, I think if you have those qualitative players, and we're just going to say it and call it how it is, let's put a potential transfer target in the center. Let's put Bernardo Silva in Juventus midfield today. Then, even although the tempo and the pace drop a bit, he's the kind of player that can still shield the ball or have these moments where he outshines his opponent due to pure quality and the difference in quality with his opponents, which is nice. On the other hand, you also have a Bernardo Silva who, if he senses his teammates are lacking a bit in spirit and mentality, in concentration, he'll be the first to address that on the pitch. And so I think it's these 2 factors that kind of, give it away for us, because you could see Locatelli at some points discussing with a Chico, with a Turin, even with a Bremer at times, but that's not enough. Also, the fitness thing, I tend to agree. On the other hand, if you have that certain amount of quality, then fitness doesn't become completely irrelevant, but plays, a subpar is a subpar factor in those games, at least in deciding the outcome of those games, because Pirlo wasn't, as we know, the big runner that you think he was, but his quality was above and beyond. And the same can be said for a gazillion players out there who have that legendary status. And I think we're just missing that. And it all comes down to what we've been repeating for the last few months, that if we're not overperforming, we're underperforming. And that's why you need these types of players. And I saw a lot of hate on media, especially during the international break, when rumors come flying in. And there's Rudiger, there's Bernardo Silva, there's Lewandowski. But in a way, these are the kind of players that you need, with that experience, with that quality, with also that, ooh, that's Lewandowski. Because that's the vibe Lewandowski gives off when he plays for Juventus to his teammates as well. So you tend to agree with him, you tend to listen to him, especially in these moments where, the tempo drops down a bit, you're not as focused as you were in the first half and whatever. That's the type of player that addresses those things, and you tend to, get riled and hyped up because, hey, that's Lewandowski pulling your ear. So I think it's a mixture of both. And Spalletti tried his best today, because you could see him frantically shouting and gesticulating all across the pitch when he saw that, our dip happened. But it's not enough. You have somebody standing on the sidelines who's not, interacting with play. So it's kind of different. Also, to get back on my Bernardo Silva situation, he's also the kind of player, and you could say the same for a lot of other players that we're targeting, that can decide that game on a whim. You're 2-0 up, the tempo drops, your passes are not as crisp as they were, and then your boy Bernardo Silva, goes into God mode and just, belters one from 30 meters out right in the top corner. And then the game's over.
We almost
Then,
saw something like that from Milik, right?
Yeah, that was an audacious take, man. I loved it.
yeah.
I really hoped. I was
I
really
loved
hoping
it.
he'd get a goal. But to your point, Frederic. I mean, I agree with your points, Frederic. I think one concerning part about Spalletti on this is we struggled mightily from the 50th-ish minute mark up until the penalty save, which kind of reinvigorated the team. And he did not make one sub during that time. And I think, and this isn't a critique of Spalletti, I think it's a critique of our bench. Because if I'm Spalletti and I'm like, we're bleeding right now, I need some presence in the midfield or something. And you look over there, and I don't think Odzic is the guy that you're going to look for. I don't think Moretti's the guy you're going to look for, at least how they've been for the last 6 months, who are going to make a difference there. I mean, the only player on the bench seemingly with meaningful minutes this year is Gatti. Do you want to bring, with how bipolar his performance has been, would you bring him into the defense? I mean, we were just absolutely, we were struck with the stupid tackle bug today. Seemingly everybody was doing an almost red card tackle at some point. You throw Gatti on, he's gonna rip someone's head off, and we're gonna be down a man. You just there's nobody really meaningful and impactful to choose off the bench except Boga, who came on, for a cameo appearance at the end of the game. But at the same time, he's not the type of player who would have himself reversed the period of play we were seeing.
And in Spalletti's defense, because I thought it was a bit odd to me. I thought that, Spalletti would sub Yildiz a lot quicker, because I think Yildiz, you could see, was a bit fatigued. And having Boga on the bench, I would have assumed that, around the 65th, max 70-minute mark, you'd make that sub. So I texted my source, and he said, well, Boga had a stomach bug. Started, yesterday evening. He was sick all night. So, I mean,
those
so
those things out of your control. They suck, don't? I mean, then
they suck. But the fact of the matter is, after Boga, there literally isn't anyone that you tend to count on, because you already knew that Vlahovic had that injury.
Yep.
He went, in the dressing room. So that's one guy out. You have Boga, who hasn't slept all night and hugged the toilet. So, what are you going to do? Then you have these guys like rightfully Moretti and Odzic, who aren't even performing in training sessions. Spalletti clearly said that to a number of people, that literally he expects more in training. If you don't give me what I want in training, I'm not going to let you play.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And, you know, to me, 1 + 1 = 2, meaning that if we don't see Adzic getting minutes in, to me, that's, you know, the testament of the fact that he's disappointing in training. So there's not a lot of wiggle room for Spalletti to work with in that regard, I feel.
I thought this was, and we haven't mentioned his name yet, but I think the second half and what we were seeing was a clear indictment of Koopmeiners and how he's.
Jeez, I even forgot about him.
I mean, so you go through this period from minute, like 55 through 75, where somewhere in that range, right, where we weren't creating anything, and it was pretty sloppy, and Genoa had more of the momentum. They had more chances. And you have our two center midfielders in Locatelli and Thuram, who I think they had decent matches on like holistically, right? And I think Thuram had one of his better matches. Looking at his statistics, like 95% passing accuracy. Locatelli is rated as the best player on the pitch by SofaScore and was right up there on FotMob from what I can see right now. But they also weren't creating anything, right? They weren't having that moment of magic or of quality, to use our favorite word, to create something and change either the pace of play or play a ball that unlocks something. And that would have been an opportunity should we have had a trusted center midfielder to come in and change that in the transition from defense to the forward line. And the fact that Koopmeiners wasn't considered to come in and change some of that, because without him, there's nobody else. There's literally no other center midfielder that we can trust. And the fact that we just chose to stomach that passage of play with nothing changing, I said was very noticeable to me.
I think that's a great point. I almost forgot Coop existed, because Thuram looked really leggy at the end of the game, in my opinion. I thought he had a good game for 60, 65 minutes. I thought he was really finding good space. He made those forward runs we love. But then he got leggy, and I think that part of it, you get tired, and that gets into what I was saying before. I don't need to repeat myself, but Koopmeiners, man. I mean, if you're not putting him in at all, Kevin, I have to emphasize your point. That is, I mean, what's worse than an indictment? It's just
there's a bit of a love loss between Spalletti and Koopmeiners at this moment. I don't have all the details, but it has something to do with communication during the international break. I don't have much details, but I think it was something that, from what I could gather, is that Spalletti expected an update from Koop on something, and Koop just ignored that and didn't let Spalletti know anything or whatever. And Spalletti's pretty solid on those types of things. Like, if you don't keep your word or you promise to follow up on something that your coach deems necessary, Spalletti's the wrong kind of guy to, get into tricks with that regarding that situation. So I think there's a bit of a love loss between them, and Spalletti's stubborn in that regard. You could have the best training sessions you want. If you disappoint him in any way, shape, or form, then you're not going to play.
Frederic, I know you don't like to give prescriptive odds, but how likely is it that Coop's going to feature solidly in our upcoming Scoop episodes?
I'd say he's going to play a prominent role.
Okay. All right, you heard it here first.
I have no idea, Frederic, what you might be referring to, and over an international break, what possibly Spalletti could want from Koopmeiners to update him
from
on.
What I could, no, it was a very cryptic message in the sense, but what I take from the message, or how I interpret it, is that there was something going on with a type of an injury, and apparently Koop knew that he was going to, play at least some minutes for the Dutch team, and Spalletti or somebody in his staff asked him to keep him updated about, How did he feel? Did he have any pain afterwards? Or I don't know, something along those lines. And he just didn't follow up in a way, in a sense of saying, look, I'm with my national team here, bugger off. I'm concentrating on them, and I don't care what you feel, think, or think you need to evaluate or whatever. So I think it's something along those lines. It for sure wasn't
Regardless
about
of
his
what it was,
personal.
or he just wanted him to update him on like what he had for dinner one night. Like, regardless of what it is,
Could be.
can you imagine the mentality of being a professional athlete making millions, and you're, how old is he, 26, 27, and you have your nearly 70-year-old coach who has been in this game like more than double the amount of time you've been alive, is asking you something in a professional capacity to follow up, and you ignore it and blow it off? Like, can you, like, what is the psychology behind that? Regardless of what the ask is, like, I can't wrap my head around that.
It's a guy with
assuming this
one
is all
foot out.
true.
It's a guy with 1 foot out the door.
Yeah.
I think it's been made clear to him as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why he is, not giving a toss about, updating Spalletti or the concierge at J Hotel or whatever. I think, he's done with the whole Juventus thing, and Juventus is done with him too. The only thing that we now need to do as a team is to make sure that we don't lose too much. Juventus is willing to take a loss on Koopmeiners as a whole, as a transfer, but they won't, give him away for free.
The X factor is, as Mitch points out in chat, is the World Cup. I mean, we've got guys who have an opportunity. If Nico Gonzalez makes the team, if Douglas Luiz makes the team, obviously both of them have played prominent roles in the past for their national team. If Koopmeiners makes the team and has a prominent role, I mean, these could absolutely shift the narrative. We all have seen it. Every World Cup, players come out and have a certain performance that sets the figure. Nobody cares what they did before. If they come out and have a dynamite World Cup, that makes a material difference on their price. So, part of me is obviously hoping that everybody on our team does well for their nation. I think that'll be good for the team, good for their confidence, and so on and so forth. But for those guys on the potentially on the market, could be huge for Juventus as well if we get top four, for the ability to finish or continue progressing to remake this team from a couple of, or a few at this point, 3 or 4 straight transfer markets that have been quite underwhelming.
We also, I want to, let people in chat know so that they can sleep easy. We're actively working outgoing transfers as well. So it's not just the rumors that you hear about, players coming in. We're also proactively working on just finding a location for some of our players, because you could just know that we're going to take a loss on a Panda. We're going to take a loss on Koopmeiners. The only thing we can do, the only thing we can do now is, damage control in a way. And
a thought I had over this break, I keep saying that. Imagine if we had spent that money, or committed ourselves to spending what we had put forward for Openda, and just bit the bullet and did it for Vega in defense.
Oh, Renato Vega?
Yeah. We were looking at what, like 30, 35?
It was less. It was fewer than what we committed to. I think it was fewer
for
in wages
Openda.
and exactly
28, I think 28.
Yeah. It's just,
obviously different players and but it's still like money is money spent on players. And I don't know. I liked him. I thought he had a really positive impact on the team in the last kind of few months of last season. And
if I can remember back to the Scoop episodes, because we talked a lot about Vega and Randall Colomwani over the summer, because Juve fans really liked them and they wanted them to stay. And there was a refrain that was the same for both, and that Chelsea and PSG did not like what we were trying to do with the formulas to bring them on. And so they played hardball. And ultimately, if I'm not mistaken, both players ended up going for less.
Yes.
To what Villarreal and to Tottenham. Well, Tottenham, it's not just a dry loan. He certainly went for less, because Chelsea and PSG were I don't know. I don't know what I don't want to say any word that's maybe mischaracterizes it, but they were
No. You're right.
Juventus,
You're right.
and they
You're
ended up
right.
taking worse deals for both of those players.
The way that Comoli negotiated during the past summer is something that was very un-Juve like, because in the past we were very committed to building relationships with teams, with managers, with agents, in the sense that we take our time, we gradually show interest and keep in touch, and now it was Comoli just coming in and saying no. Like every request or agreement that was made, it was no, but there was no follow-up. Like, I mean, you could have handled it better in the sense that for a Vega, you could say, look, guys, we really like him. He likes us. Is there any way, we can, meet each other halfway? Maybe we extend the loan and we'll pay you something extra and have a loan out for like 5 mil a year and pay you the rest of the dividends out for, say, 25 million in 2027. I don't know, something along those lines, but we didn't. And then, of course, if you're new to the Juventus world and he wasn't CEO back then, so his political weight in terms of negotiating is not as strong as it should be now, from what I can gather. Then you burn a lot of bridges along the way, and the same can be said for Colomwani. But Koopmeiners, I'd rather take Vega over Colomwani as a definitive transfer, but that's not the subject here. But I think we need to be very careful, and we need to let Ottolini do a lot of the heavy lifting this summer. I hope.
I hope so. I hope so as well. We certainly can't have a repeat of what we experienced last summer. Sorry, I took us off track there, and I'll reel us back in to the second half. I mean, we started already. We started this episode talking about De Grey and just giving him the appropriate applause for how he performed coming in off the bench for the second half. But I think, given what we were just talking about, how poor we were in that middle part of the second half, and we're missing opportunities. If we had gone 2-1 down off of that penalty, which I still looked outside the line to me, but let's just assume for a moment that absolutely was a correct call and a penalty. If we were 2-1 down, did you have confidence that we'd be able to hold that out, or was 2-2 incoming?
Hell no. Hell no. No, no.
You had, I mean, not only would the momentum have shifted, but you would have Bremer, Thuram, Locatelli, McKenney, all on stupid yellows, so they have to play off. You really haven't had the Cambiasso mistake yet, so that, and the team, oftentimes when put under that late pressure, I mean, what have they done over the last 2 seasons? They crumble. And so, the playing the what if game is always not the best, right? Because it didn't happen that way. But it would have been very nervy. Yet, when for some reason, and I'd have no reason to believe this way because De Gregorio's penalty record with Juventus is abysmal, but I was strangely confident with how he looked when they step up to take that penalty, and then you have the double save, and that then throws the whole potential momentum shift back in Juventus's favor to give us that lifeline that we didn't have for the previous 25 minutes. And then we saw it the game.
But that's why De Gregorio is not a very good keeper, in my opinion, because he had nothing to lose with that penalty. There was no pressure, like none. I think 99.9% of Juve fans thought, okay, that's it. It's 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't have any pressure. Everything is a bonus. Then you can actually achieve results. But if you set De Gregorio in goal right now at an Atalanta game, which will be even more decisive than the game today, given the results, chances are he'll choke again because he doesn't have the quality to handle that pressure. And that's also a quality that you need to have in order to be a top player, let alone the technical aspect of it. It's also the mental aspect of it. You never see a Del Piero, a Pirlo, a Totti choke mentally, in my opinion. Did they make mistakes? Of course they did, but they never, in decisive moments or when the pressure was fully on, choked. So,
I don't fully
and the
agree with
same,
that. I don't fully agree with that. The it's unequivocal that his confidence was shot, and which is why he was benched. It's unequivocal that he has been underwhelming. I think it's unequivocal that he was better at Monza. But and last but not least, it's unequivocal that he's never going to be at the level of your Pirlos, right? That's just not what De Gregorio is ever going to be. But that doesn't mean you can't take a supreme moment of quality and translate that into confidence that then translates into a period of form, because even mediocre players get in periods of good form where they're highly useful for their team. And we're not asking him to be Buffon, and we're asking him to be a competent goalkeeper, which he hasn't been. So, I don't immediately think that you put him out against Atalanta, and I don't know if I would do that if Perrin is healthy. But I don't think you automatically go to the doom and gloom scenario. You see how he is in training, you see how his mentality is, you see how he exhibited and carried himself today, and you never know. He could come in and continue to play an important role down the stretch for us this season. And then, as folks say in the chat, I would, bid him adieu in the offseason.
oh yeah, definitely. If we have a valid substitution.
Yeah, if he's
replacing two keepers is
playing
tough.
a vice Allison, a vice whoever, right, and being numbered. I don't mind him as a number 2, but he probably views himself as a number 1, understandably so, on some squad somewhere, just not here.
Yeah, but it's not as if Kaneseki goes to Barcelona, he'll demand the number 1 position just because he's Kaneseki, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We did a scoop episode a couple weeks ago, Frederic, and we had an entire slide dedicated to goalkeeper discussion. So that is also, it's pretty much every single position on Juventus, both incoming and outgoing, will be featured heavily in this scoop. I think that episode had something like 25 names.
We need players. We need a starting goalkeeper. We need a striker. We need a quality midfielder. We need another center back. We need another right wing back.
Yep. So stay tuned, because the management, though, especially if we get champions, the management is not positioning itself, and Frederic build on this, is not positioning itself like it did last year, where they came out and everyone said, we have no money, we're going to be looking for deals and steals. That's what the summer was last year. That is not how the team is planning for the summer, right, Frederic?
It's also not a coincidence that John Elkann attended the game today. From my understanding, John Elkann was there to ask for updates about next season. Not that, he's not interested in what's happening this season, but he knows damn well that 4th place is the ceiling for this season. And he's very confident, or at least he shows that he's confident in the fact that he wants management to get to that 4th place. So he's not into that doom and gloom scenario. There are scenarios where Champions League qualification is not existent, but we as management are not, focusing on that. So rightfully so, Elkann wants updates on, how's next season gonna evolve in terms of players coming in, going out, who are we working with, what are our priorities. And this is something Elkann is now very much, how shall I put it, focused on within Juventus. He wants that priority list, and he wants to see the priorities being met and dealt with accordingly, and not just haphazardly snatch an Openda for 40+ mil on deadline day. So he's very involved in that scenario, which makes me feel a bit more confident, not because John Elkann is the most competent man on earth, but at least that they're bundling forces and looking, for that long-term
commitment. Does it suck that this is a World Cup? I guess maybe for some players it could help boost their value with it being a World Cup summer, but it would be great for us to be making some moves early and not waiting until deadline day to bring a team together. So you're giving
who told you that we're not doing that?
I'm just assuming, based on the track record of this team, that
yeah. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
But no, we're much more proactive, and I think I said this on our Scoop episode as well, Zach. We're much more proactive this period than we were in the past. So that's no guarantee for a positive outcome or results, but it is something that is a bit of a shift in terms of things that happened in the past and now. But the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. But the intention is to spend. I think want to make this perfectly clear. Last year, it was very clear. Steals and deals. We need a player to go out, to come in, that type of thing, where it was really the messaging was pretty transparent on the front end that it was going to be a tough, thin market.
Yeah.
The management team is at least planning to be aggressive, and not $100 million on a player aggressive, but to really bring in some smart free transfers and some players that punch above their weight in terms of their value. And so stay tuned to the Scoop, because we'll keep you as up to date as possible.
And the focus this transfer market is on quality.
Hey, as it should be.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you'd expect an Openda to do better than what he did. I mean, we all knew that Openda wasn't the type of player that Juventus needed at that point. We raised some questions about his utility on the pitch, rightfully so. I think if you know your football, even Elkann literally said, "What's the use of Openda? Why did we buy him? Because I don't know anything about football, and I could tell that this is not something that's going to work." Apart from that, the thing is, you need that shift. You need that quality injection. You need, if you want to keep growing, and then age and all these things don't come into play that much. I mean, I'd like the next Pirlo, 21 years of age, but it's not sustainable at this point. So
how about this, Frederic? How about this? Just keep it real simple. You just get on the horn. You tell John Elkann to do the Lewis Hamilton call to Senesi and Bernardo Silva and just have him lock it in.
I'm not sure if the board of directors would agree there.
Oh,
that is the main issue. If you have a budget, the board of directors agrees on said budget, but you also need to get certain players in. And I think from what I can tell is a part of management wanted to get that budget in order to reinforce the team, and the budget of the outgoing players would go to our little whims, as is a Bernardo Silva, as is maybe a Lewandowski for a 1-year contract. Even though it's expensive, you can afford it because a lot of players, went out and gave us a lot of money in return. That lot of money in return that we're expecting is not going to happen, or we expect it's not going to happen. So that limits your little fantasy football Lewandowski, Bernardo Silva moves. As far as Senesi, there's just some doubts about him wanting to join Juventus rather than wanting to join a certain paycheck. All the talks we had with a lot of players, we were very enthusiastic about, they knew Juventus, they knew what Juventus meant and what they were trying to go for going forward. Whereas with Senesi, there's some questions about, him being truly interested in being a Juventus player. Of course, we could drop 10 million a year and get him in. He'd sign on the spot, but is it then the kind of player and person is that the type of player you want in your team at that point? Because you need the Kellys, you need the maybe even the Vlahovics in terms of not just, but wanting to get to that next level or play in Italy or, fighting for Scudetto. You need to see that type of fire, not just, just pay me my money and I'll come and train and play some games with y'all. So
let's try and bring some closure to this match. So gentlemen, start thinking about your player of the match or some of the top ones you'd like to discuss. But first, I'll share some of Spalletti's post-match comments. I didn't get them in English yet, but I have what he said on La Gazzetta. so it's interesting, right? So we were trying to talk and discuss what was happening in the second half, and Spalletti didn't know either. There was no fatigue at all because yesterday and the day before we didn't train. They just brought themselves onto the pitch to walk. The problem is that sometimes we accept being an inferior version of ourselves. After 6 to 7 months, I'm still not sure what I'm dealing with. And the Gazzetta headline is like, after 6 months, I still don't know what my Juve is. So I think, and this is a guy that lives with this team day in and day out, week in and week out, has seen the highs, has seen the lows. And if he still has this confusion, I don't know if that just speaks to the truth of what this team and squad and club has been since our last Scudetto win 5-6 years ago, or if this is more on, hey, you're an experienced coach, why haven't you figured this out yet after 6 months? I assume the former rather than the latter.
Porque no los dos, my friend. It's well, look, you asked me earlier what you thought the second half reason was, and I went on this long spiel. Well, we got our answer. It wasn't fatigue at all. It was mentality, and that. I think when you talk, I've said about this team. Frederic has said about this team, you've said about this team, that there's a quality issue. I mean, we just have to accept the fact that it's a flawed team, is the language I've used in the past. And oftentimes we refer to that technically, but I think it bears emphasizing after hearing Spalletti's comments that a flawed team can also mean flawed mentally. And that's showing a lack of leadership on the pitch, a lack of personal accountability when I was talking about mentally digging deep, mind over matter. But it also talks about a coach whose job it is to manage this group of men. And if he doesn't know, that might be reminiscent of a dumpster fire locker room, for instance, or just an overall really poor collection of quality. But Spalletti should be able to, and has the qualities, able to get the best out of these players, should rally them in different ways. He certainly should, based on his resume, his experience, and looking at the players we have, most of whom he's familiar with. So I think that is a reflection of both.
I also think it's a cry for help from Spalletti towards management or Elkann, saying, look, guys, I've done all I can do with this team, especially on the mental part, because you could train on dead ball situations or whatever, but this is the ceiling right here. And if you want to move forward and you want to compete for Scudetto or quarterfinals, Champions League spots or whatever, then I'm going to need different material. And I think he's right on that point, because we've seen a lot of different coaches over the last years with pretty much, I'm not going to say the same team, but the lead characters in that team, and the results barely changed. And it begs the question that if a guy with all this experience, with all this knowledge, with all this high IQ,
It was
and
his 300th Serie A win today. I didn't realize that, but
I mean, and it's also the first time that the Curva chanted his name and some sort of song in his honor. It's the first time that they honored Spalletti in terms of singing and whatever. But if that guy tells you, like, guys, I really don't know what's up here. Like, I've done all I can. I pulled out every trick in the book that I had. I've all the aces are out of my sleeves right now, and this is the best we can do. Then it's a cry for change, especially in personnel. Because the fact that you don't bring in a Koopmeiners, regardless of why or what or whatever, after we paid him a fuck ton of money, the constant hollering at Turin during the whole game, Turin was, and you can double check me on that and fact check me on that, everything Turin did in the whole game, after his action, he looked over to Spalletti, seeking for this approval or whatever, or guidance or whatever you want to call it. If that's the most you can get out of this team, I think it's fair to say that you need some shift in personnel. And I think we've been saying that all along. Like, we have a flawed team, as Zach eloquently said. but we need to remedy that. We can change another coach who's happy to come in August or whatever and start afresh with a new Juventus adventure. But I don't think that's the way. I think we need to look the facts straight in the eye and say that 60% of our squad is just not, maybe even more, it's not up to par for Juventus' standards. Our coach, we can say, is, given his track record and the things he's done, on the season, I think he has the right to renew his contract. But we need to be sure that we can remedy the flaws in this team, and we need to start doing that yesterday. And I think that was maybe Spalletti's, I know John Elkann's here, so let me pull something rather controversial out of my speech here and see what can be done.
It's quite the thing to say. It definitely is. And we have one of our friends here in the chat, if I scroll up, saying, where I can find it, I lost it.
I think it was Mitch.
Something to the effect of, that's the worst thing a coach can say about his team, and I think we would all agree. But focusing on the team, we did have some good performances today. Zach, who was your top player of the match?
I got to shout out De Gregorio.
You didn't save him for Frederic. What a jerk!
You gave him the floor earlier. You gave him the floor.
I wanted one
Okay, I'll pick somebody else.
No. I'll pick somebody else. I already have somebody in mind with more reason to it.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna pick Chico, I know you hate both of them.
Nope. Well, not gonna pick Chico.
Then I'm gonna pick Chico. I'll let you wax poetic about your favorite goalkeeper.
No, that's. I think Gavin was gonna glaze De Grey today.
Okay, well, I'll since we did talk De Gregorio a lot and we didn't talk Chico a lot, I will pivot to Chico. I think during the first half, when we were very vertical and with the increased pace of play, we got him out in the flat, we got him in the attacking third. He just was bottled threat today, individually as well as a distributor. Got the assist on the beautiful second goal, and he faded a little bit towards the end of the game as things sort of devolved, and that was true of Yildiz as well, as we were able to get the ball forward. But I think today's the type of performance that we expected to see more so from Chico, of persistent positive threat and play for significant portions of the match that then yielded goals and assists just directly due to his contribution. We just didn't see it a lot this year, but we have seen it.
Since his game performance against Roma, he's been
decent period of form.
We've seen a better version of him.
Absolutely. So I just want to call that. Today was kind of going to be my day of calling out or praising players that we've criticized a lot in the past, with their De Grey and my Chico. But that's my Chico spiel. I'll let De Grey.
Well said. I was going to bring him up, but that was well said. Frederic, over to you.
I'm gonna follow suit with give the bashed players a bit of positive notes. My man of the match, not objectively, very biased today, is Cambiaso.
Yeah, he did have a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a good game.
Because I'm gonna also, tell you why. Because I felt that after the debacle of the national team and him not being called up on that team, I would have assumed that it would leave some sort of a mark on him mentally or have some effect on his game today. And I was just waiting for that typical Cambiaso moment where he short circuits and just, fucks up, in all honesty. And that didn't happen. Even better, he was very focused throughout the game, was very communicative, and was very clean in passing, intercepting, defensive duties. It wasn't the game where you say, like, oh, who is this guy? Let's buy him. But it was the game that you'd expect Cambiaso to have every game. And I'm very happy that he proved me wrong, in the sense that I felt that he was going to butcher the game due to his mental instability. But he did quite the opposite. And that's why, for me, he's my personal man of the match.
Yeah, I think he
didn't see that one coming, did you?
No, I
appreciate it. Yeah,
I know he had a quality first half. Nobody had a great second half, but he did well in the first half. I think statistically, like the algorithms that rate these players on these other sites, the performances that Turin Locatelli had today were really liked by these algorithms, and they were rated very high. I think their performances were fine. I don't think there was anything like really stand out. I mean,
no.
Yeah, I mean, De Gregorio, obviously, we've talked about him, and it's funny that both of you passed up on him out of fear of being the one to step up and say that. But clearly, he had his mark on today's match and rose to the occasion. Chico's performance, I thought, also was nice. Cambiaso had a good performance. Weston, despite his goals, did not. I think his misses, the stupid yellow card and not coming through, I think overshadows the goal that he had. But
yellow card that's going to leave him out against Atalanta, by the way.
And this is the fourth game in a row that Weston's been kind of disappointing. Yeah. Can I say disappointing? I mean, we expect more of him, because if you draw the comparison of the Weston we saw December, January.
It's the contract renewal hangover. The same thing happened to Yildiz. He went like 3 or 4 games after his renewal without having a good match.
At the same time, so this might not apply to next game because he's got himself suspended for next game. McKenney didn't do anything today to hurt the team affirmatively, that we've seen people do in the past, like your Cambiaso examples. And yes, he was sloppy in attack. But at the end of the day, if Vlahovic has just a dog shit game but scores a goal, we're usually like, he had a good contribution out there. Chico has a dog shit game. He gets an assist or a goal. We say, he did his job out there. The thing is with McKenney is, at sometimes he's not the most technical player. That's the package you get. But he's been producing goals and assists.
Yes.
Consistently. So it's like, I don't want to go too hard on the guy. Did he have a great game?
No.
No, but did he hurt us? No, and he scored one of our 2 goals. So should he have had more? Yes. Could he have?
We just have a right to, like, what we're doing. We have a right to be critical, and he had a goal, and that goal was important today. But there was also a lot left to be desired from the rest of the performance. But clearly, on the whole, he's had a great season.
If you get used to certain performances, I think that's also one of the reasons why you extend the player in the sense that you're glad to see what he's bringing to the team and on the pitch, which makes it a no-brainer, because we all thought that the McKenney renewal was a no-brainer. I think because you look at it in the sense that you remember the games that he's playing or the level that he's playing at, and if then 1 game, okay, 2 games, it's still not bothered. But, after the 3rd game, you start, second guessing yourself a bit, I feel. And I agree with the fact that, he scored today, which was a vital goal and whatever. But, he set the bar so high pre-renewal, for not only for himself, but I think, in terms of what we can expect of him or what he's shown that he's capable of. Then you're kind of second guessing now, like, why isn't he doing the same? Because he made it look so easy as well. It was not like he had to dig deep to get those performances in. And, that makes me like wonder a bit.
I still think on the whole, he's been the most consistent player the entire season.
With Kelly, I think alongside
Kelly and Kalulu.
Kelly, Kalulu, McKenney.
Fair shout, Kalulu, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Even you could also argue Locatelli, especially the last months. I think from November on, we've seen a different Locatelli, I think, that we ever saw in a Juve jersey, which is also thanks to Spalletti for a great deal. But I think that's the core of our team at this point.
No,
and
then we get back
Locatelli, Yildiz.
It definitely is. You look at those players.
You get back to that, quality thing, and the fact that we just need new blood, fresh blood. You can't drag on Vlahovic. You can't drag on Koopmeiners or Panda. They're dead weight in this team. Let's be honest, and let's just not look at it from a financial aspect, but also a sporting aspect. Because in order to save 20-30 million euros on an Openda deal, you might jeopardize your whole season next season because you're
overly fixated on that. Yeah.
For Vlahovic or whatever. So I really hope that management makes, even if it's a gamble. I mean, I'm not afraid to take a gamble on a player, but I hope they make more decisions that seem to be thought through. and not Openda-esque, because that would be the death of Juventus.
Because to build on that point, and rightfully so, we've criticized David. But when you look at the Douglas Luiz deal, you look at the Koopmeiners deal, you look at the Nico Gonzalez deal, you look at the Openda deal in retrospect, maybe even the Dusan Vlahovic deal, the Chiesa deal. I mean, you could go. All of those, in my opinion, are infinitely worse than Jonathan David, because you paid nothing for Jonathan David and you paid 40, 50, 60, 70 mil for those players. And
Do you want to know?
when your overall contribution is just, when you think of salary,
I don't think
plus
anybody's going to
transfer
argue on that point.
yeah. And so when you say you want riskier deals, you get a guy in on a free. I mean, as much as people knew that what Aaron Ramsey at Arsenal was broken, and you rolled the dice on it, it didn't work out. It's not the end of the world. You pay 17 million for Thuram. You pay roughly about the same for Zagrova. You roll the dice. That's not the end of the world. It's the end of the world when you pay 60 million, which could have been 1, 2, 3 players for a player who can't even get in minutes when you're up 2-0 against Genoa. That's a disaster.
I got a text also during the break period. Do you want to know our official expenditure, transfer fee wise, in the last 4 years? Like the official on the books. I'm not even counting the extras.
Does this include like agent fees and bonuses?
No. It's just the transfer.
Yeah.
The transfer deals between us and Clubs X.
I mean, it's got to be
just 4 years, including this one, including the 25-26 season.
Expenditure, I'm going to guess 700 million euro.
No, it's less.
I was going to go somewhere between 4 and 5.
Yeah, it's 498.
Oh, because the last year of Allegri, we didn't spend that much. Because I looked at it like before this summer, so before this season, 8 out of the last 10 years, we spent 200 or more million euro every year. And, obviously most of them, we got nothing to show for it. But
400 and if you add the manager signing bonuses, whatever you want, then you can add another 25% to that.
But I'll say this: I think what you're saying, the point you're making is that we spend a lot of money. But I bet if you went back and looked at any 4-year span over the last 15 years, this will be the lowest number. Because I kid you not, I looked at the last 10, 15 years, we average generally about 200 million in acquisitions a season. I mean, if you're saying we did 450 over 4, that's savings. That's less.
Yeah, but we had deals like Pogba, who left on 100 mil. We had a lot of players that we could sell for a lot of money, making that money seem a lot, but really isn't. Whereas so now we're stuck on dead weight, like a Koopmeiners, a Vlahovic.
Since Pogba, we've only sold one player where we got cash for more than 40 million euro. Since Pogba, only one where we
also had Champions League final and semi-final money too for a couple of those years as well. Like that goes a long way.
Yeah, if you're 40 plus 90 million in minuses and you don't get any incomings, then it amounts to a lot. Especially if you see what players we attracted. I mean, Koopmeiners, Openda, and that's not even counting Openda because Openda's not on the books yet. It's going to be on the books. Yeah,
that's going to be next year.
Yeah.
But
so we still have.
But if you look at it, probably the thing is this last summer and Allegri's last year, we spent the least we've spent in 10, 15 years. And so those are within the last. And by the way, people saying, Pjanic and Cancelo.
Don't bring up Pjanic. That's like the most fraudulent deal in the history of football.
Those were accounting shenanigans. There was no cash. We didn't get those. The Delict is the only sale since Pogba in excess of 40 million euro, which is a bit embarrassing. really. For a team of our stature, we should be able to, or we should have been able to, not anymore because of where we are, but we should have been able to leverage our position for more meaningful sales, but we haven't. So even though I agree with you, Frederic, we have sold players. Our average general, like, and you can look it up on Transfer Market. You can go and do the research. This is what I'm referring to, is we averaged over the last 10, 15 years, 200 million spent, roughly 100 million sold. So, I mean, our net transfer spend is just egregious. Egregious.
And don't get me started on the wages.
Yeah. And we're not going to. Yeah. We're gonna start to bring this conversation to a close. We have a very important match next weekend away at Atalanta, who at any given season have been either a team where we have really good memories against, whether it be Coppa Italia final or a Super Cup, or they have been our kryptonite and have been our undoing in some very ugly matches. And it's from a neutral perspective, this is an exciting fixture because you just don't know what you're going to get. But we're going away against a team that was embarrassed in the Champions League final, has had a final in the last knockout stages against Bayern Munich, a team where Palladino continues to, I'm thinking of the Turinese pizza, the pizza Palladino. Raffaele Palladino has continued to do well in Serie A since replacing Juric. They've got something to prove as well, trying to claw their way and hold on to a Europa League spot. This is going to be a tough one without McKenney. There's people in the chat here who are saying that if we lose this, Champions League is over. I disagree with that. I think you even look at coming into today, right? Nobody saw Udinese taking points away from Como. We lose against Atalanta. Inter could beat Como. It's just every single week from here on out is going to be unpredictable. We just need to do our best to win. I don't think any one game at this point is lose and you're out.
True. No, I mean, I think you go in with a must-win attitude first, but on the flip side, you recognize that Atalanta has double the points at home than they do away. Like, you know that Bergamo, and there's always been a place where they play well, and they're going to see it as an opportunity against, let's be real, a flawed Juventus team to steal points, even if it's a draw. You know, they can build on that. Juventus can't be looking at it that way. Juventus needs to be going in there with the mindset to win and to push and to dominate. And when teams have pushed against even Palladino's Atalanta, let alone Juric's, they have folded at times this year. So I think I would love Spalletti to go in and say we're going to take the game to them and not sit back and be negative at the start of the game.
The only concern I have is McKenney, not technically, but in terms of physicality and the kilometers that he eats during a game. Who's going to handle that? That's my biggest concern right now, because you need a player like McKenney in those types of games. The dirty do it all kind of guy that, you know, gets the miles in, cuts off the passing line.
Do you think Spalletti goes three in the midfield, Coop, Thuram, Locatelli, or do you think like a Moretti comes in, who has just been a wet towel since the Sao Paulo match in January?
I don't think he'll change that much. I don't think we'll see David. Honestly, don't. I think this is a game that's written on Boga's shirt. This is a Boga game for me.
What if he goes Boga, David, Yildiz, Chico?
Then you're putting all of the running and work on Thuram and Locatelli's shoulders without anybody tracking back. You'll have Yildiz do it because he does, even if he necessarily shouldn't be, but that minimizes his offensive impact.
You say that, I'm inclined to agree with you, but then you put, like you said, Moretti in the midfield, where a sneeze knocks him over. You put Odzic in the midfield, and he hasn't played in a while, so clearly there's match fitness there. If not, other struggles. You put, Koopmeiners doesn't really have a place in it. I mean, to send Koopmeiners to Bergamo to play and then play poorly in front of fans who hate him, that's not putting him in a position to be successful. Like, the reason why I say, Boga David's going to play in the McKenney space anyways. Boga showed a good poacher's instincts when he's been at the striker position. He's not going to get a lot of touches there, but he can harry the opponents by running around like he does. Chico, Yildiz do their thing, and then you play on the front foot and don't sit back, requiring Locatelli and Thuram to do a lot of work.
I think we'll see a Kansas City shuffle in terms of formation. I think we'll start with a certain formation and then go into full hybrid mode, maybe even with a false nine. I'm just thinking what Spalletti would do. I'm not saying that
I think Milik's even an option from a fitness perspective, just to give us like 50, 60 minutes.
I don't know if he has it. I don't know if he has it. Because I'll tell you this about Milik. I mean, we've only seen him for cameo appearance last game. He came in, we saw him for 30 minutes, give or take, today. He looked a lot more confident in what he needed to do.
Is he walking around with some swagger, even though it's not like merited?
Really I mean, you say it's not merited, but this is a guy who's played, who has a long career. I mean, he's been there and he's done that. And yes, he has not played recently because of his injuries, but this is a guy who knows what it means to win. He knows what it means to score.
Like, I have a child who's been like alive longer than like Milik's gap in play in a Juventus shirt.
I think the short of it is, and we don't need to talk too much about Milik, is I don't think he's got the legs in it. Though if he did, he has certainly looked like he knows how he fits into this team for the minutes he's been on the pitch. Like him and Vlahovic in the last game, Milik was way more effective than Vlahovic was in their both limited times.
Agreed.
Today, you saw Milik do exactly what we would have expected Jonathan David to do: drop into the midfield, hold up the ball, distribute out. And he looked way more comfortable and composed doing it than David does. Milik, who has been on the trainer's table for a year and a half, looked stronger in hold-up play than Jonathan David, who, who's...
That's why I say, if you can get him for 50 or 60 minutes, I'd say start him.
If you can get 60, I would start him. And I would start him with David in the 10 role, because David is maybe not, we've talked about David. We don't need to say he's the greatest thing ever, but one, he actually is the only other player on our team who runs with McKenney in terms of his coverage. And if he's already going to be in that midfield position, then you ask him to do a little bit of role to play the team game.
If Vlahovic wasn't injured, Vlahovic would have started today.
That's not something. But you said he might have a knock, and if he has a knock, he's probably going to keep him out of the next game too.
No, but I'm also going to tell you why, not just because he's Vlahovic, but in training, or that's what they reported to me, Boga Vlahovic was a lethal combo.
That's interesting.
You said Boga Vlahovic? That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, because Vlahovic needs space. And Boga, we saw it today. He gets on the pitch for like 2 seconds and then he dribbles the entire Genoa team. Like he's just that spark plug that draws attention because of his unpredictability, and that will pull people away from Vlahovic and maybe give Vlahovic that step that he needs to be kind of a poacher, a competent, effective poacher. You get Yildiz, but you have to get people close to him. Too often in the past, certainly in a 4-3-3, you have Chico, Yildiz way out wide. Vlahovic, David, anyone you put in there is horribly isolated. You need to get someone in, which is why I'm sort of pitching this 4-2-4, because whether it's David, whether it's Vlahovic, no matter who you put in the middle in the 4-3-3, the way Yildiz and Chico play, there's too much space around the 9. You need someone in there to play off of them. And so and you could say David sucks, don't ever play him, but put somebody else behind him that can pull attention away, physical bodies away and attention away from Vlahovic, Milik, whomever, to give them that ounce of space to try to work a little magic. If you go 4-3-3 and you put Vlahovic up there, we're going to see the exact same Vlahovic we've seen in 99% of the games in the 4 years he's been at Juventus.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys one question before we round off?
Yeah.
If that's okay. If we were to get in Lewandowski on a 1-year deal, but in order to get him, we would have to sacrifice Bremer. And I'm not sure who's going to substitute Bremer, but that's just my question. You sacrifice Bremer, get a Lewandowski in return, and a Mr. X in defense. What say ye?
No.
Depends on who the Mr. X is in defense.
Let me get a bit of context in as well. If we sell Bremer, it's going to be for more than 40 million.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be on the clear side, like we have then 40 million to invest in another defender or whatever you deem relevant at that point. But
I honestly would say yes to that.
I would put, for me, I look at what did I just say about our striker situation? Right, we tactically struggle to bring strikers into play because of how we set up and our lack of quality, creative quality in the midfield. Right, Locatelli's not going to be that guy. McKenney's serviceable. Like, we like McKenney, no brainer on the renewal or anything, but he's not necessarily the creator in the center who's going to really jive with the Lewandowski. So if you say to me, out of all the players that we could potentially get on a free, the most important to me is Bernardo Silva, a creative midfield player who also has legitimate leadership.
But it wasn't the question.
I know, that's why, but I'm saying no. I wouldn't take that salary cap and that attention to Lewandowski. I would focus it elsewhere, because you could pick your striker of the last century and you put it on our team. If you don't fill in slots around him to better bring in strikers to play and better deliver better balls, whether in the air or then they'll all be useless.
So Silva, Lewandowski in a combo, you'd say yes.
Well, if we have Silva,
in that respect.
Oh, then now we're having fun, Frederic.
Look at how
now we're having
giddy
fun.
He gets.
Now we've talked about it. We don't have a central creative force. And we've been making do with McKenney's fantastic utility, making overlapping runs, how good he is in the air, the way he's able to find pockets of space, right? But we do not have anybody through the middle who can legitimately create, and that has left, for the last 4 years, our strikers isolated. Until we solve that, I don't want to go over the top, over invest in a striker, because we're going to then say week in and week out to all these fine folks who are listening to us, man, they were useless. And then the other one says, man, they were just isolated. They weren't useless. And we're going to be being the broken record of the century. We need to solve the first problem before we solve the second one.
I'm going to spoiler one thing. I hate spoiling, but I'm going to spoil one thing. We won't, 99.9%, we will not see Bernardo Silva on any scoop sheets in June.
So you say that because he would have already signed, or there's just no point talking about it.
Stay tuned. No,
right.
No, he's gonna. No. The last thing, we're in the running for Bernardo Silva. That's the thing we know. We were the first to report it. We're still in the running. We're still in contact. Bernardo Silva said, "I'll make my final decision before the month of within a reasonable term before the season ends." And given the fact that the season in Italy ends halfway around May, I think, and Premier League as well, I think. Mm-hmm. We should, have a yes or no or definitive or more options about, what he's going to do. So he'll make his decision. He has 3 picks that are, he has 40 picks. I mean, every team wants him, but he's nailed it down to 3 potential locations where he would like to close off his career, and one of them is Torino. So we're still in the running. Nothing's decided yet, but I think it'll be decided within a short time frame.
Well, we have to go beat Atalanta, finish in 4th place.
Yes, sir.
And
it would help. It would help.
Give the man Champions League football. and perhaps
would
some of
help.
these other exciting names we're talking about, and we're selling potentially players like Bremer to strengthen our team rather than out of desperation in order to stay financially afloat because of the 60 plus million we'll miss out on for
Yeah.
Hey guys, this was a really great conversation. For those of you who joined us on YouTube, for those of you either watching the video on replay or listening in audio format, if you've made it an hour and 45 minutes in, thank you. We've loved having you along this way. But just selfishly, even if nobody was listening or watching, Frederic and Zach, it was just awesome to get to chat with you guys.
Agree.
Following
Thank
a win,
you so much.
positive development, cutting some points off of Como's lead, and hopefully we'll be talking about something similar this time next weekend. But Frederic, Zach, any closing words before we tie this one off?
Just want to say, echo what you just said, Kevin. It's been so long since I saw you guys, and so I was excited to be a part of this episode and talk about a win. But again, appreciation to all the folks who joined us in chat. And, the majority are the folks that we've come to expect and enjoy seeing, game in and game out. So really thank you guys for tuning in. We do this mostly because we love doing this with each other, but we all consider you now part of our broader family. So thank you for your participation. Thank you for showing up, and stay tuned for post games, after hours, scoop episodes, blacks and white, and whatever else we got going on, because we got a few things in the cooking in the hopper as well. So thank you all.
Yeah, just want to shout out you guys because I really miss you guys. Like you're part of my family in that sense. So really like seeing you back again, talking with you, especially people showing up today. And I also want to remind people, I'm not sure what Zach's agenda is, but I'm pretty sure we'll get cracking on live scoop episodes, especially the coming weeks.
At least one, if not a couple this month, yeah?
Yeah. Of course. I think maybe even if it's manageable for you, one this week. So we'll talk later, but stay tuned to that. Also, I want to thank Kevin for hosting as well, because I know his schedule is pretty hectic, as is Zach's. But for you guys taking the time out on a Sunday afternoon to do this with everybody here involved.
Sunday,
Monday, but it feels like a Sunday with the Easter thing and Easter Monday and that kind of vibe. So I just wanted to thank you guys.
And the resurrection of De Gregorio, Christ. On that note,
when is he going to heaven? When is he going to heaven? Isn't there like the Ascension Day or something?
On that note, absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you for listening. Fino alla fine, forza Juve.